Hope you had a good day. We are in volume three, chapter three, and we're talking about odor control. Obviously, when dealing with wastewater, we're going to have odors, right? But it shouldn't be to the point where it's creates a negative environment for either the operators that work there and the maintenance that operate there, or the people of the public. Collection systems, those types of lift stations out in the public, they really shouldn't have extreme odor. It creates a bad public image for us as operators, and it just is not a good image for whatever government agency you're working for. So, odor control in wastewater collection systems and wastewater treatment plant has two main objectives: to comply with the regulations and to create an environment free of nuisance odors for wastewater operations and to the community. In addition to preventing odors, controlling odors and odor causing elements in liquid prevents corrosion in facilities and equipment. Along with odors, usually there are gases, and those gases can really corrode our equipment, bolts, nuts. Nothing worse than being a maintenance man trying to work on something that is completely rusted apart. Trying to work on a bolt that there's no head to the bolt. And so, if we can control our air, control our gases in our buildings and in our wet wells, we can do a good job of extending the life of our equipment. When we talk about odor, we're talking about sulfur compounds. So hydrogen sulfide and organic reduced sulfur compounds are odorous compounds widely known to be correlated to the sulfur compound. Hydrogen sulfide is a colorless gas that produces a rotten odor. I'm sure you've smelled it in maybe well water. It is also a toxic gas and can be fatal to humans at or above concentration of 500 parts per million. The odor threshold value for hydrogen sulfide is 0.0047 parts per MV. Sulfur dioxide is another sulfur containing odorous compound produced inside the treatment facility and is mainly produced from the burning of digestive gas or wastewater sludge. When dissolved oxygen, sulfite ions will remain at sulfate. If the wastewater does not contain dissolved oxygen, the microorganisms will reduce sulfite to sulfide using the oxygen in the sulfite compound for energy to break down organic matter. So, really, in our collection systems, you can get this hydrogen gas that's built up. Once again, it's going to attack the insides of manholes, rust, anything that it comes in contact and causes some corrosion. And so we want to make sure that we get it under control. And Then there's nitrogen compounds. Nitrogen compounds are a significant source of odor in wastewater. Among the nitrogenous compounds are ammonia and amine compounds are predominant source of odors in wastewater. Still to this day can smell ammonia. Um, it's that odor of a activated sludge plant that's gone wrong, has a distinct odor. And so really as an operator, using your nose is a good indicator of how you're doing as an operator. We've been given uh, sight, hearing. We use all our five senses really when we are working. Um, Understanding the process of odor generation in a collection system helps operators establish odor control as a priority in the collection systems. It includes planning, design, construction, and operation. So, in all those things, we use those key components to control our odor. Um, when we talk about inside the collection system, factors that promote biological conversion of sulfate to sulfide is the sulfate concentration and the concentration of organics and nutrients. Pipes. Sometimes you may have a pipe that has a belly into it. If that pipe is left with a belly with not a lot of flow, you can get a lot of buildup gases in there. Anytime we can add fresh air to something, making sure we have the right feet per second drop and that there's no bags in a line in our pipes is important. Lift stations, lift stations, the sewage comes in, it sets for a period of time, increasing the amount of time or decreasing the amount of time that water stays in your lift stations can help with odors, and also having them cleaned. You know, um, Going out with a fire hose, maybe cleaning the lift station. There are masking agents, bioenzyme packets that you can throw in your lift stations. I've never had much luck with those, but you can. Force mains. When we talk about force mains, those are from your lift stations, so they have force behind it. Uh, they're pumped from sewage, but they have uh, force behind them. Usually in our preliminary treatment on page 133, uh, you know, that's where we're going to get a lot in our headworks, a lot of gassing off, plus odors. In most plants, all it says inside a preliminary treatment area, turbulence, pump discharge, sudden changes in flow, and hydraulic disturbances favor the release of odorous gas. Reducing these conditions will minimize odor emissions. Although they can be encouraged, the emissions of more dissolved gases from wastewater, pre aeration basins, or in channel aerations can help entrain dissolved oxygen in the wastewater to convert sulfide that is formed back to sulfate, minimizing the odor generous potential. So, just some things that we think about in our preliminary treatment. On page 133, I wanted to highlight sometimes waste activated sludge from biological process is returned through the primary clarifier to thicken before sending the thickened combined primary and secondary sludge to the solids handling. This practice also enhances odorous gas production due to the decrease in dissolved oxygen that occurs with increased biological activity in the sludge blanket. So one of the ways of working with your secondary and primary treatment, when we make an adjustment, knowing that there's a possibility of there being odors with our adjustment at our plant. 72, secondary or 134. Secondary clarifiers also produce an earthy or musky odor like an aeration tank. So really our aeration tank should have a musky odor. It's like an earthy odor. If it's a stronger than earthy odor, we need to really check on our air or check on our loadings, or is our organic loading too high for our aeration plant? We need to look at our screenings. Screenings and grit produce objective odors. We need to make sure our grit is getting washed, getting all the organics off of the grit, um, and making sure that our oils and greases are getting rid of. We talk about they talk about odor measurements. Equipment that you can use. They talk about odor panels. Odor panels are a common measure for measuring or evaluating odor. An odor panel is a group of trained odor assessors. In all my history, I have never seen an odor panel. I'm not saying they don't exist. I've always read about these odor panels on page 143. You can see a laboratory olfactor meter. Basically, if I can smell it and the customer can smell it, then it's a problem, right? That's how I work. Maybe your city buys you an odor meter. Um, Maybe you got more money than we do. Um, but once again, there's a guy there trying to on page 144. He's got some sort of olfactometer. Um, you know, Once again, I just kind of go on. You know, are people smelling it, right? And we need to know that the sense of smell is different per person. So especially after COVID. Some people have a stronger sense of smell, and we need to take that into consideration as wastewater operators. We may have worked around wastewater our whole lives, and so our sense of smell has deteriorated, especially if we've been a water operator and smelling chlorine, most of our lives. Maybe our mucous membranes just aren't as sensitive. On page 148, I'd like to highlight the information can be used to identify the sources of odor problem. So, you know, we have ammonia, uh, and it smells earthy, medicinal, chemical, is fecal, offensive, decayed cabbage, fish, rotten egg, decayed flesh, garlic, skunk. These are the kind of things we can use to describe. But ammonia odors come from organic compounds with nitrogen attached. Um, and so knowing that source control opportunities begin with the infrastructure design. We want to minimize hydraulic detention time in pipes and wet wells, maintain dissolved oxygen in the wastewater, routinely cleaning structures to remove grime, grease, sludge accumulation, routinely and frequently disposing of screening and grit. Um, I go out to our lift stations and knock them down with a fire hose. That's one thing we do just to, make sure we're on our clean and keeping control of our air. Chlorination. Chlorination is probably one of the most oldest and most effective way used to control odor. Chlorine is used in the disinfection process and is readily available at the wastewater treatment plant. Because of its availability, at the wastewater treatment plant, because of its availability and its well-studied properties, chlorine frequently uses to control odor. Chlorine is a reactive chemical and therefore oxidizes many compounds in the wastewater, including sulfides. Um, and chlorine also controls odors by inhibiting the growth of the sulfur-reducing bacteria. But chlorine doesn't always remove uh, odors. Increasing the pH of wastewater is an effective control method for hydrogen sulfide. Let's talk about absorption on page 154. Absorption is the physical process in which odorous compounds are removed from a gas from the adherence to a solid liquid. Certain materials such as VOC and hydrogen sulfide have absorption properties towards odorous compound, making these materials useful in treating odious air from wastewater treatment plant. So I believe some of this could be your like activated carbon that you have. Uh, I know I just bought an air filter for my car, and it's got activated carbon in the air filter in the cabin filter. Activated carbon is a good method for reducing odor. On page 156, activated carbon is a highly porous material. Absorption takes place upon the walls of the pores within the activated uh, carbon. So just knowing it's an effective means for controlling odors. Um, on page 158, there's a components of a modal ventilation unit. So obviously with carbon, you have to either dispose of it or regen the carbon. Okay. So then we get into chemical processes. So wet chemical scrubbers. The objective of a wet chemical scrubber is to facilitate the gas and liquid contact so that the mass transfer of odorous compounds lead to the compound's absorption into the liquid phase. Once the odorous compounds absorb in the liquid phase, the chemical present in the liquid phase reacts with the odorous compound, forming stable products that never exit the liquid phase and preventing odor. I've never used a wet chemical scrubber. I'm sure some of the bigger plants have on page 165. There's a typical um, uh, you know, scrubber that uses to treat air. Chemical mist scrubber. As the name indicates, the chemical mist scrubber uses an atomized spray of chemical solution that absorbs and reacts with the odorous compounds in the airstream. An advantage of a chemical mist system includes the capacity for accommodating flow rates, low pressure drops. A disadvantage is the high energy and maintenance requirement of a chemical mist scrubber. There's ionization. We won't go into that too much. Biological process. So, biological odor treatment employs microorganisms to treat vapor phase odors. Microorganisms, primary bacteria, oxidize the odorous compounds in the airstream, and then thus reducing the odor level in the treated air. Um, you can see on page 177 a biotrickling filter. In trouble. So odor masking, once again, you can mask the odor. You can have a public outreach and community engagement. It's all odor complaints. There's a form on 191. Monitoring and recording your trouble spots. Therefore, having a plan when a problem happens, having all the details so that you can give to your supervisor, so that you can apply correct operational procedures and cleaning plus money is paramount to our job as operators. Thank you.